It's Thursday. That means it's time for Noon's Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon, here at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and I'm joined by a special guest, a longtime friend of mine in the industry, somebody who knows the Iowa Hawkeyes better than anybody else out there, Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com, and we're here to talk about the upcoming Ohio State-Iowa tilt. Tom, how are you doing, man?
Doing better than the Iowa football team is right now, I think.
Absolutely. And, not even going off of my questions right here, it's got to be something. It's you sit there, you're a year removed from a 10-win season. We don't see huge structural changes necessarily from last year's team to this year's team. And, it's a great defense, and then there's an offense. And it can't be boring, I guess.
No, and it's interesting because the previous three seasons, they had two 10-win seasons. In the COVID year, they had 6 wins. They won basically over 70% of their games in a 3-year span. So it wasn't like things were broken. There was the COVID year, they averaged 30 points a game and ran an average 4.5 yards per carry. So, but there were some warning signs last year where they were getting by on turnover luck, getting to 6-0 and number 2 in the country after that Penn State win. But since that point, Iowa is 7-7 as a team, and several games where they're in single digits point wise, and you can't expect the turnover luck to always continue for you. And that's kind of showed up. Even the Rutgers game this year, they had a pick 6 and a scoop and score to get to 27. They only scored 13 points against Rutgers. So it's the offense right now is struggling, and that's probably being nice. They're last in the country in total offense per game, and points per game is not good. It's a struggle right now for Iowa offensively.
Well, let's talk about the good side of the ball, and that would be the defensive side of the ball. I mean, year in and year out, Iowa's among the conference leaders, among the national leaders. What is it about this defense, other than the fact that they don't really change what it is they do? What is it that makes this defense so successful? Because as both you and I know, in terms of covering recruiting, they're not getting a ton of 4- and 5-star type of guys. There's that occasional Xavier Nwankpa that comes out, and that they're able to keep somebody like that home. But what is the key to the success of this defense?
It is essentially that they follow their assignments to a T, and they gang tackle, and they rally to the football. And that's really as simple as it is that they just don't make a lot of fundamental mistakes. Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator, has just coached that group up. They're always in the right position, and they gang tackle. And if they do those two things, and the other thing they don't do is give up big plays. They've only given up 5 what Parker calls explosive plays all year, and that is a run beyond 15 yards and a pass play over 20. Thus far, they've only given up 5 this season. So from that perspective, I think they've done really well, and they've limited teams from getting those big plays down the field, and that they make teams drive it, essentially. And most teams just aren't patient enough to take those long drives. Now, Michigan was, and you saw the result. They were able to beat Iowa pretty handily. The Iowa State game, they were patient enough in the fourth quarter to execute a 21-play, 99-yard drive against Iowa and scored the touchdown and won the game based on that one touchdown. So if you're patient and you can do those things, or if you've got, like Ohio State, explosive athletes, maybe you can exploit some of the things. But Iowa is just fundamentally sound on defense. And they're sure tacklers, and those two things can take you a long way.
Yeah, Ohio State leads the Big Ten by a wide margin in terms of explosive plays. Every program has a different parameter and idea of what that is, but Ohio State certainly is a program that has shown that they can hit the home run ball, but they're not afraid to play small ball either and go station to station and manufacture points. But other than the fact that I was able to limit largely those explosive plays, how would you see Iowa trying to attack the Ohio State offense? I mean, is it going to be more of a we're really gonna focus on taking the run away from you, and if you're gonna have to sit there and beat us up top, or is it the other way around? I mean, it's an oversimplistic thing of saying, well, we're going to take one or the other away. Sometimes you can take both away, sometimes you take neither away. But how would you approach it if you were running that Iowa defense and knowing the system and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, from a defensive perspective, I think I was going to. It always starts with them, and Phil Parker will tell you this every time. It starts with stopping the run, and they have not been great this year, especially the last couple of games on first down, which is kind of their bellwether down, where they've got to keep people at 2nd and 8, because if it's 2nd and 4, then they just tend to struggle a little bit more, give up more first downs, can't get off the field in 3 and outs. And that's where they're most effective, when they're able to get off the field quickly. So I think they're going to I don't think they'll play like a prevent. I don't think they're going to do anything funky. They're definitely probably going to play the 4-2-5. Their extra defensive back, they call him a cash. It'll probably be either Cooper DeJean or Sebastian Castro, one of those two. I think it might be Castro this week, just because DeJean will probably end up playing corner because Terry Roberts is out, one of their starting cornerbacks. So they're just going to play 5 defensive backs. I think just do what they can to stop the run, and then really, I think probably knuckle down on trying to keep Marvin Harrison Jr. and that crew from just killing him down the field.
Going into the season, I did a piece where I talked about potential Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and Jack Campbell was somebody that came up on my list. How has he performed so far? What does he do well, and what might he be able to do against Ohio State?
He's I think he's leading the Big Ten in tackles. If he's not, he's right there. And I saw ESPN.com and The Athletic both have him as first-team All-Americans midseason. And he probably deserves it. He's really good. He's bigger than you think. He's a legit 6'4", 6'5" as a middle linebacker, which is pretty big by Iowa standards. Usually they have guys that are 6'1", maybe 6'2" as middle linebackers. So he's really rangy, athletic, gets out to the edge, plays sideline to sideline. Smart kid, really good filling on the run. He's a terrific football player. And also, I should mention Seth Benson, the other linebacker, very good player too, really underappreciated. But Campbell is kind of their heart and soul, I think, defensively. And how he goes, so goes the defense. And they rely on him to do a lot of filling on that pass, or on the run game, to stuff things up. So you're going to probably see a lot of Jack Campbell all over the field on Saturday afternoon.
I switching sides of the ball because eventually we had to do it. Heard some comments about why not making a quarterback change in terms of Spencer Petras. Let's tackle Petras before we tackle Brian Ferentz. Why is it still Spencer Petras? And I'm not saying it to denigrate the kid or anything like that. Even in the NIL days, well, they're getting paid. Well, they're still kids. So I mean, but it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle. 2 touchdowns, 3 picks, 54% completion percentage. A little factoid I had in one of my stories today was Spencer Petras, over the course of his collegiate career, has thrown for 2 fewer yards than C.J. Stroud threw for last year in just one season. So why? I mean, is there not the depth there, or is there just are they just a level of being comfortable with Petras, or what? I don't get it.
I think C.J. Stroud might have more touchdown passes this year than Petras has in his career. So it's crazy. I'll say this about Spencer: he is a terrific kid, and it's hard to dislike him because he's a stand-up guy that has taken a lot of arrows, and very good with the media, and I give him a lot of credit. But he has struggled, and he admits it, that his footwork sometimes gets off when he faces pressure. And he's faced a lot of pressure. The offensive line has not been good this year, and that's part of the problem why he has struggled this year. But those struggles go back to the COVID year. Those struggles go back to last year. But Iowa is sticking with him. They just feel like he gives them the best chance to win. He's and part of it is, I think, they just believe he's not going to make the bad mistakes. And while he's limited in what he can do from the good perspective, they're always fixated on, well, at least he's not turning it over, and then we can just punt it and play defense and kind of see if you can create a turnover or play the field position game a little bit. Now, I don't know that you can do that this week, because I think you got to score points this week. There's just no path for Iowa to. This isn't going to be a 13-10 game. It's just not. So you've got to score points, and that's the issue for Iowa this weekend is, can this offense generate any points? And I'm not seeing it because Ohio State's defense has improved based on what I've seen with the new D coordinator.
Would it be safe to say there's some people over there saying maybe they should punt on first down? Because that's what it sounds like. If it's a case of, well, we're not going to gain anything, but we're not going to lose anything. And then we need to just give our defense an opportunity to get out there and create that sudden change and put points on the board. I mean, we may as well just punt on first and take the foreplay out of it.
Yeah, well, the thing they would argue is that the defense at least gets a little bit more of a breather if they run 3 times into the line. So, but the big problem is that the offensive line is just not blocked well. They're averaging, about 2 yards a carry in the ground game this year. They just have not had any sustained success running the football. And if Iowa can't run the football effectively, it's historically under Kirk Ferentz, it has not been a good outcome when they can't run the ball effectively. And, Petrus got sacked 5 times last game against Illinois. They were blitzing the heck out of him. And there were a couple of them where he just had no shot. I mean, he didn't even get to his back foot on the drop, and he was already under siege with a guy coming just straight through. So part of it's him. Part of it's also, just the offensive line has not been good.
With the offense, and this is a difficult question to answer, I guess, in some ways, but I'm going to try it anyway. How much of this do you put at the feet of Brian Ferentz? How much of it do you put at the feet of Kirk Ferentz for, it seems that, it's not like Iowa's offense was setting the world on fire in 21 or 20 or 19 or 18, and we could go on and on and on and on. But Iowa's always been a program. When people ask me to describe Iowa, it's like, they're just one of these programs that you don't want to play. They get the most out of their kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But lately, one of the other things that I have to hang on them is they can't play a shred of offense. And now they've been stuck, in this situation. And, I wouldn't want to have to sit there and have the conversation at home if I'm Kirk Ferentz. Oh, fired my son today, fired your son today to the wife, but here we are. I mean, I know what message boards are saying. I read plenty of message boards, and there's plenty of angst and anger over the lack of production with the offense. But is it fair to put it all on Brian Ferentz? I mean, and I guess as a part B to this question, if the offense doesn't get significantly better this year, could you see a change at that position, as difficult as it may be?
Good question. Here's what I would say about the Iowa offense. They've had 3 offensive coordinators, and Iowa fans have wanted all 3 of them fired at one point or another. Ken O'Keefe, Greg Davis, now Brian Ferentz. I think the common theme here is it's a Kirk Ferentz offense, and offensive coordinators I always use the term, they're allowed to sometimes color outside the lines of what the parameters that Kirk has for the offense. He wants to be balanced. He wants to run the football. He's going to be married to his inside zone, outside zone schemes. And they're doing more kind of traps and things like that right now than they have in the past in the run game. To some success, I think they've had a little more success, but pass game's always been pretty limited under Ferentz. There's been some, waggle plays and things of that nature, but it is just it has cratered in the last year or so. Since that Penn State game, it has just really become a painful slog. Now, what do you do with a guy who's the head coach's son? I don't see Kirk. That's one of the things that a wise man once told me is never hire people you can't fire. So I think a son is probably within that mix of never hire one of your family. But here we are, and he's technically supervised by the athletic director, Gary Barta. We say that because there's nepotism laws at the University of Iowa that prevent him from being supervised by his dad. But could Gary Barta, the athletic director, would he fire Brian Ferentz and then create a change at the position? I doubt it. I think we all know that wouldn't go over very well with the head football coach. So, and the athletic director has said he does not really like to meddle in staffing decisions for the football program. So he leaves that to the head football coach. So long story, I don't think there's going to be any change. I think the way Iowa might get out of it is if Brian Ferentz got a different job somewhere else. Say, one of his good friends is Bill O'Brien, who's the OC at Alabama. If Bill O'Brien got a head coaching job somewhere, college program or back in the NFL, maybe you see Brian go there. But the problem is right now, Brian is also involved in the lawsuit with the racial inequality within the program, and that lawsuit is still ongoing. It is hard to hire somebody with that hanging over you without creating quite a stir, especially in a college community.
Absolutely. I mean, at this point, just from results on the field, he might be a little too hot to handle at this point, not even getting into anything in the legal arena. Something that Ohio State fans aren't necessarily going to want to talk about, but it's very real. The last time these two teams played was in Iowa City in 2017. Ohio State, I believe, was like a 21-point road favorite. Yep. And got blindsided by a combine and lost 55-24. Ryan Day was asked about it. He said it's a scar. It's something you don't heal from. There are coaches on the Ohio State staff that were there in 17 who are going to remember it. Ohio State's certainly going to be able to draw motivation off of it. Iowa, on the other hand, the last time we faced these guys, we whipped them by 31, but it's a very different situation. How do people on the Iowa side view 55-24 in relationship to this game?
Yeah, here's what I'll say. TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant are not walking through that door, to paraphrase Rick Pitino back in the day when he talked about Bird, Parrish, and McHale weren't walking through the door. Those guys aren't going to be in Columbus this weekend. So that was a big part of that game. That was probably, that was Brian Ferentz's masterpiece. He was the guy who designed that offense that day, but it was also the defense making some huge plays that day. I mean, Amani Hooker on the first play intercepts and gets a pick six, but that was still volleyball in that first half. It was still going back and forth until Iowa kind of had a couple quick changes, and I think it was 31-17 at half, maybe. And Iowa had pulled away, got a score really late in the first half, and created that distance. But that's one of the more stunning things. I've been doing this 20 years now, and that's one of the more stunning results that I've ever seen from a football game, because Iowa might squeak one out over Ohio State, but Iowa doesn't destroy Ohio State very often. Just very, very rarely when that happens, especially putting 55 on Ohio State. And I think Ryan Day was the OC, wasn't he, or the co-OC on that team?
It was year one for him. Yeah, he'd come in and yeah, he was yeah.
Yeah, that was Josh Jackson had 3 interceptions in that game, including that highlight one where he jumps up in the air and grabs it one handed. Yeah, it's I, I I don't know. You play that game 100 times. I think that's the result one time. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, hanging a double nickel on him, probably 1 in 100 for sure if
Yeah,
you're doing
yeah,
it there. And it was the one that it was the one that we saw. So you know, I don't think we're gonna. I don't think we're gonna see Iowa hanging a double nickel
no,
on Ohio State. I'm not so sure we're gonna see Ohio State hang a double nickel on Iowa. But how do you see this game kind of playing out here in the final question? And
yeah,
take a shot with a prediction.
yeah. I just think this is pretty much of a mismatch. I just don't get the sense that Iowa's going in this one without a whole lot of confidence. You know, back in 13, they went to Columbus and they kind of had this funky game plan and hung in that game for a long time. They played this kind of big boy ball and played 3 tight ends and a guy named Jake Doozy caught a long touchdown pass. And they just kind of hung around and hung around. I think they might be running into one this year where this Ohio State team is looking to make a statement. They sat back last week and watched college football and saw all the points going on in Knoxville and see the opportunities ahead of themselves to maybe distance themselves and get them. You know, I think you want that #1 seed for sure when you go to the CFP. So I think they're coming in on a mission. It might be close in the first half where Iowa can kind of muck it up and just make it tough and you know, keep it close, but eventually talent wins out. And, you know, if Ohio State's at full strength at wide receiver, Iowa just does not have. They've got some good corners. Riley Moss is good. Cooper DeJean's good. There's K'Von Merriweather is a good player. Quinn Schulte is a great player, but they just don't have the horses to hang with what Ohio State brings to the table. And so I think it's going to be like 42-6, something like that. I just see the Buckeyes pulling away, you know, scoring maybe up 21-3 at the half, and then just kind of double it up in the second half and get a couple scores late in the third quarter and kind of put this one to bed.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. My score will go up on the site on Friday, but I'm very much in that range. Scores floating around out there. My big prediction too is that we'll probably see some of the 2s and 3s by the fourth quarter, as I think it will be a close-ish type of game in the first half because Iowa will be able to muddy it up a little bit, but at some point, you know,
Talent takes over.
the dam breaks, and then that's that. So you know,
It
Tom,
wouldn't, it wouldn't surprise me too to see Ohio State maybe if it gets out of hand, it's going to be because there's a couple of turnovers by Iowa. You know, a pick six or a pick in a short field, something like that, a fumble, short field. I think those are the things that could. That's when you get to maybe it's 49, maybe
right.
it's 50, you know.
And certainly, you know, once
Yeah,
that happens, everything kind of falls apart at that point. And you know, you look at the Iowa game in 2017, and you know, Iowa had Ohio State in hand, and then once the wheels came off, I mean, Ohio State couldn't do anything to stop Iowa at that point.
yeah, yeah, and that's what you worry about if you're Iowa is that it just the ball gets rolling downhill and then you just can't stop it, and you just hope you just get out of there without getting guys hurt.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, I appreciate you taking part
Yeah,
here on the Big Me Kickoff, and I want to thank everybody out there for tuning in here on a Thursday. And we're a couple days away from the game. Tom, are you coming out to the game, or are you going to watch this one from home?
oh, I'm coming out to Columbus. I love coming to the Horseshoe. So you know, it's a good time, and you know, have a fun. At least get to see the bands perform too. So that'll be
there,
always
there
special.
you go. Iowa bringing its band out. There'll be a joint performance
Yep.
some point during the game. So a very exciting time. So I want to thank everybody for watching. And until then, we'll talk to y'all very soon.